Good day, and thank you for tuning in 3D, the Daily Divine Direction broadcast. For all of our new listeners and viewers who are tuning in for the very first time, I'm Pastor Pope, and thank you for allowing us to come into your viewing environment. We are here with you every Monday through Friday from 12:30 p.m. until 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, scheduling permitted, to address whatever topics you might like to discuss, whatever issues of life you find challenging or that you find difficult to navigate. You may call or text every day on the T-Mobile caller text line to discuss careers, finances, entrepreneurship. You can discuss marriage, divorce, raising children, blending families. You can discuss dating and relationships. Whatever's in your heart, whatever's on your mind, God is concerned about that which concerns you. So you may call or text on the T-Mobile caller text line at 267-992-1424. And we are here in 3D, the Daily Divine Direction broadcast, brought to you by Fiji Water, Earth's finest water. You may already know that Fiji water comes from Fiji. However, did you know that it is created by nature? It is untouched by man. It starts as a tropical rainfall which slowly filters through layers of volcanic rock. The water collects in a natural, sustainable, artesian aquifer where it is bottled right at the source, free from human contact until you unscrew the cap. Fiji Water, Earth's finest water, will be delivered right to your front door when you subscribe for delivery, and you'll save money at FijiWater.com. This is Earth's finest water. I'm going to say to all of our listeners and viewers, those of you who continue giving on the Give segment of our app, and those of you that have made a weekly or monthly commitment to support the broadcast, we thank you for your support and your commitment as we fulfill our commitment to God to be here to address all of the topics that are of importance to you and all of the issues of life you find challenging and that you find difficult to navigate. God is always concerned about that which concerns you. I should announce to all of our listeners and viewers that on next Thursday, a week from today, so we're already going through some of the communications that have been sent in about nutrition and about diet. So if you want your communication to be considered by Rebecca Buva, our monthly contributor, RebeccaTheDietitian.com, who is a licensed and registered dietitian and nutritionist, she will be with us, as always, the first Thursday of the month. The first Thursday of every month, she is with us so that we can ensure that we are healthy and that we are well in our body, mind, and spirit. So next Thursday from 12:30 p.m. until 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Rebecca Buva, licensed and registered dietitian and nutritionist. You can find her at BeccaTheDietitian.com, and she will be with us as always on next Thursday, the first Thursday of every month. So tune in. You don't want to miss this. Make certain that you encourage your family, friends, coworkers, and colleagues to tune in, because it will ensure that they have a better quality of life. So I'm going to address a communication that came in from one of our listeners and viewers. And before I do that, I'm just going to say that we will be discussing You Inc. again, Your Own Universe Incorporated. We will be discussing the topic of the Chief Investment Officer. Yesterday, I went over the Chief Operating Officer of your life. Today, we're going to talk about the Chief Investment Officer, because we are going to reduce the wealth gap. We're not going to be able to eliminate the wealth gap in our generation, but we are going to reduce the wealth gap. And because we reduce the wealth gap, we're going to reduce the health gap. So I'm going to be addressing the Chief Investment Officer today, but right now I'm going to address a communication that came in from one of our listeners and viewers who indicated that your husband says that you constantly complain about everything. And for the first time, you now realize that he is right. The problem is, you said in your communication, that you do not know how to stop yourself from complaining. So it's very interesting because, when everything begins with language, and sometimes when people say to me, it's everything is a problem. Well, I often respond by saying everything is not a problem. We often make everything a problem, but everything is not a problem. When you wake up in the morning and you breathe the breath of life and you have another opportunity to maximize a day that God has created for you, to maximize your potential with opportunities that he places before you, everything is not a problem. The truth of the matter is that you've realized that your husband is correct. You do complain about everything. And God allowed me to see in that secret place of your life, you don't need to complain about everything. You choose to complain about everything. So you said you don't know how to stop yourself from complaining. So, I could give you a very simple instruction, but I want to make certain that we all have the opportunity to benefit from your communication. So let me start by reminding everyone there's a scripture that says, from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. The problem is that our heart is so filled with complaint that you are letting it spill over in your mouth, from your mouth. So we have to examine, why is everything a problem? And part of the reason that everything is a problem for you is because you lack the faith to believe that everything will get better. And the reason is because all things work together for the good, for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. The problem is we want to implement our own purposes in life, when the reality is that God has a purpose for each of us. Now, it may give us many gifts and talents to expand on our purpose, but he has placed a purpose in each and every one of us. And then what we use to maximize that purpose is going to be a different topic. But I want to start by helping you with this issue of complaining. And here's the good news. You've already started the process. You started the process because you realized that he wasn't just making that up. He's been listening to you for all the years that you've been married, all 15 of them. He's been listening to you. You both got married at 25, you're now 40. You've been married for 15 years. That's a good foundation that you've laid. And over the last 15 years, he's listened to you complain about everything. You are absolutely correct. God allowed me to see in that secret place of your lives. And I don't know how your head hasn't exploded and his head hasn't exploded, because it's everything that troubles your spirit. And the problem is you've been complaining so long that you don't know how to stop the complaints. So let's begin by examining your life. Now, this is the good news. So you've recognized that you're complaining about everything. And you have to really examine the things that you're complaining about. So half of them, 50% of them are personal, 50% of them are professional. And because of that, and the reason your husband has brought this to your attention, is because it has delayed the destiny of your lives. When we're complaining, so as I was prayerful about this, God kept reminding me of the children of Israel, how they complained and how they murmured and, everything that they didn't like, they complained about. And it kept them from getting to the promise that God had appointed for their lives. So we have to take on a different perspective, and we have to say, I know, and I'm not going to give away my Sunday sermon that's coming up, because the reality is that God has a plan. Now we have to write the plan, write the vision, make it plain. And then we have to work the vision, work the plan. So you're complaining because every day that something new appears that you didn't expect to go the way you wanted it to go, you complain. When he doesn't do something the way you want him to do it, you complain. When things don't go your way at home, you complain. When things don't go your way at the office, you complain. And you have to recognize that every time you open your mouth to complain, your complaints are putting brass over your sky. In other words, I'm using that's a biblical analogy, but what's happening is your complaining is hindering your progress. You've got to decide to stop complaining so that you can commit to making progress. When you're complaining, you're not making the commitment to progress. You're complaining to remain right where you are in the midst of your complaint. You're complaining and remaining right where you are. And you've got to recognize that, because your husband's recognized that your complaining has hindered the progress and delayed your destiny. So let's try something different. There's a scripture that says, think on those things that are lovely, think on those things that are pure, think on those things that are of good report. You've got to think positive. And you have to, when you speak, you have to speak positive things. You have to believe in your heart that things will work for the good. That just because your husband doesn't do something the way you think he should do it, doesn't justify you complaining about it. It means that he has a different way of doing things. And just because the people in your work environment don't work the way you work, doesn't mean that they should be fired. It doesn't mean that you're any better than they are you're just different than they are. You're committed to working diligently, but are you committed to maximizing your success? So these are all little things that you are going to have to change in order for you to stop complaining. You're going to have to recognize that no matter what goes right or wrong today, the right will come. The good will come. What God has purposed for you shall come to pass. But you have to stop complaining about it. And for all of us, for all of our listeners and viewers today, for every one of us, complaining does nothing but keep us in the process of our complaint. It keeps us right in the midst of our complaint. It keeps us right where we are and delays our destiny. It prevents us from progressing when we spend our time complaining. Because when we spend our time complaining, we're really just wasting time. And if we're wasting time, we're not maximizing our opportunities for success. We're not maximizing our success. So you've got to decide today that this is going to be the first day of a new life for you. And the new life is going to consist of understanding your blessings. You and your husband have been married for 15 years. Got married, both of you are 40. You were 25 when you got married. That's a blessing in itself, that you've been able to remain married for the last 15 years. It's a blessing that you have begun to build a quality of life together. Now, unfortunately, and you didn't tell me this in your communication, but I will tell you that God allowed me to see in that secret place of your life. Unfortunately, you haven't been blessed to have children. That's not the assignment that God has given to the two of you. You are going to have to focus on building your own life and identifying someone else that you can bless their life. There's some young person out there that you can bless their life. But you have to walk in your own blessings first so that you can bless someone else, so that you can be a blessing to someone else. This segment of the broadcast is brought to you by T-Mobile, America's largest and fastest 5G provider at no extra charge. So if you are not currently a T-Mobile customer, you may call or text on the T-Mobile call or text line at 267-992-1424. We will place you over into our queue so that you can become a T-Mobile customer and experience America's largest and fastest nationwide 5G provider at no extra charge. Taxes and fees are included in your bill, and if you auto pay by attaching a credit card to your account, you will receive a discount on your monthly bill at T-Mobile, America's largest nationwide 5G provider at no extra charge. I'm going to address another communication that came in from one of our listeners and viewers who indicated that you have been watching the broadcast since COVID began. Someone directed you to our broadcast and you've been applying much of what has been said, and suddenly everything is going well in your personal life and your professional life. So let me say, first of all, to God be the glory. We thank you for tuning in and allowing us to come into your viewing environment. So you've been with us for a year now, because COVID has been a year. And you've been tuned in because someone directed you to the broadcast. So I'm going to use your comment, and thank you for your communication, to inspire all of our other listeners and viewers also. Because just because you're not going through one thing that one of our listeners and viewers have sent as a communication doesn't mean that there isn't some takeaway that you can apply to your daily life. So our listener and viewer who sent in this communication is a prime example of that. You've been applying much of what has been said. That's what you said in your communication. And suddenly, everything's going well in your personal life and your professional life. And here's the reason. And so I'll finish this, because your concern is, how do you ensure that everything keeps going the way that it's going right now? And my answer to that is, stay the course and run your race. Don't get distracted by anybody else's race. Don't try to get in anybody else's lane. Stay on the course that you've been on this past year. I'm overjoyed that something that was said pricked your spirit when you watched at the beginning of COVID. And now you've been with us, and you stay with us, and to God be the glory. We want to have that type of impact, and your communication is going to have an impact on others, because people will now understand that when you apply the daily divine direction of God to your personal and professional life, that everything will work together for the good. Because now you've been called according to the purpose of God, and you understand that God has this great purpose for each of our lives. It doesn't necessarily mean that our lives are going to be blinking in lights. It doesn't even mean that everyone's going to notice what you're doing. It just means that your life will be blessed, and that you will experience a great quality of life, and you will be able to continue building on that. So for you, everything's been going well in your personal life. Your relationship has changed because you've been applying much of what's been said. You've got the right attitude. You are committed to your relationship in a different way. You're dedicated to improving your spiritual life. You're seeking to have an excellent spirit. Your life is filled now with gratitude. You know, all of these things make a difference. We are really monitoring, analyzing and monitoring our behavior on a daily basis. All of those things are going to change our personal life. And because our personal lives are changed by doing these things, our professional life begins to flourish. Opportunities begin to be presented. We begin to manifest success. We begin to explore the success that God has prepared for us as we enter into the fullness of God. You know, all of these things are working together for the good in your life. So I say, to God be the glory, but you know what's really interesting is you said suddenly. And you just acknowledge it's been a whole year. Most people don't realize that suddenly doesn't mean overnight. Suddenly means that we've put in work to change our attitude, our behavior, our level of commitment, our dedication to our spiritual life, our spirit of excellence, that then translates into having a grateful spirit. And it all is based on the faith that we have in what God is willing to do in our lives. If we just surrender our way, our will and our will to what he has written in his word. You know, it's very interesting that we really have been living this Christian life without knowing and understanding God's way and his will. Because God's way and his will are going to really allow us to experience the fullness of God in all of our lives. We've got to seek his way. We've got to know that his way is going to be better than anything that we could possibly come up with for our own way. So I want to say this to you, and I want to say this for all of our listeners and viewers. What we talk about here is what God has spoken, what God has revealed, so that we have daily divine direction. We need daily divine direction. We need direction from God every single day of our lives. That's what we need. If we have that, both our personal life and our professional life are going to flourish and exceed our own expectations, because God has written in his word that he will exceed abundantly above all that you can ask or think, according to his power working in us and through us, that our lives may bring him glory. So I want to say to you, thank you for sharing that communication, because that's going to bless the lives of so many others. Let's stay on course. You want to know, how do you stay in this place of personal and professional satisfaction right now? And I say to you, stay on course. Run your race. Don't get distracted by anybody else's race. Stay on course. Stay in your lane. Run your race. And let God order your steps. And if you continue to do that, every facet of your life will continue to be blessed. This segment of the broadcast is brought to you by Charles Tyrwhitt, located in London, the UK. They also have stores in New York, Chicago, Washington, D.C., and at the King of Prussia Mall in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. So if you're in any of those areas, stop in, check for their store hours, and stop in at their retail store. They have everything that a man could possibly need. They have shirts for men, ties for men, suits for men, and accessories. If you're not in any of those areas, you can order from Charles Tyrwhitt at ctshirts.com. They will ship and deliver right to your front door in an appropriate period of time. And the White Company, located in London, the UK, They also have a store on Fifth Avenue in New York. So if you are in New York, check for the store hours. Stop in at the retail store. They have everything that they have everything that you could possibly need. They have home goods, clothing for men, women, and children. If you're not in New York, you can order from The White Company at thewhitecompany.com. They too will ship and deliver right to your front door in an appropriate period of time. So, as I indicated previously, we are going to conclude our broadcast today with You Inc. once again. Today is the CIO, the Chief Investment Officer of You Inc., your own universe. So you are going to become your Chief Investment Officer. And the reason that you're going to do that is because it is necessary for the C-suite to have someone who focuses on building wealth and preserving wealth. So I've been encouraging young people who have gotten away from the thought process of home ownership. Now that seems to be shifting just a bit. They're starting to take it more seriously. Home ownership is going to be one of the ways of building wealth. You've got to own real estate. Real estate becomes part of your real estate. You have to be able to build some wealth so that you have long-term financial stability. Okay. So the Chief Investment Officer, the responsibility of the Chief Investment Officer is to develop and provide investment information or education for yourself and your family. So you need to research. What can I do to build wealth? You know, there's a significant wealth gap in America, and the reason initially is because people did not invest in the stock market. So I've kind of talked about this previously, but I want to drive a point home with this. So I'm going to say, once upon a time, the stock market was done in fractions, and because human beings by nature sometimes have the tendency to be lazy, people didn't want to calculate fractions, so therefore a whole segment of the population was shut out of the stock market because it was done in fractions. If shares of a publicly traded company said that the cost of one share was 12 1/8, that meant it was $12 and 12.5 cents. And people didn't want to calculate fractions, so they just didn't get into the stock market. The psychological impact of that was, once the stock market was evaluated and to increase the investment in publicly traded companies, they began doing it in dollars and cents. The psychological impact of people being shut out of the stock market, it became intergenerational. So people of my age group, baby boomers, our parents didn't invest in the stock market, so they didn't build any wealth. They were basically trying to keep a roof over our head, clothes on our back, food on the table, and keep the lights on. And that was their mentality. Our generation, we began becoming homeowners, investing in the stock market, doing the things that we could to build a better life for our children. Sometimes we gave our children too much, but and when I say that, I'm repeating a friend of mine who often reminds me that we've done so much for our children that they didn't take on the same spirit. Home ownership wasn't necessarily important to them right away, but now that's kind of changing. The good news is that investing in the stock market, home ownership, and entrepreneurship will build wealth. So you have to provide investment education for yourself and your family. Then, as the CIO, you have to develop a consistent and flexible 7-year plan for your investment portfolio for you and your family. 7 years, then I go 14 years, 21 years, 28 years. Every 7 years, you need to have a strong, consistent, and flexible investment plan for your portfolio, for yourself and for your family. And then it has to be based upon prospective market realities and system growth. Don't try to listen, you can't be on a get rich quick scheme, you have to be on a get rich slow scheme. And you have to Draft the best policies that are going to support the vision for your finances.